He had learned how to live quietly. Not because he wanted to, but because life had taught him that noise only attracted disappointment. Every morning he woke up before the sun, washed his face with cold water, and prepared for another long day. There was no excitement in his routine, only responsibility. Bills waited. Work waited. Expectations waited. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped expecting anything good for himself. People around him thought he was strong. He carried himself that Wakeham, controlled, never showing too much emotion. But strength, in his case, was just another word for survival. He had loved once before, deeply and honestly. That love ended not with shouting or drama, but with silence. Promises that slowly faded. Messages that stopped coming. A future that quietly slipped away. Since then, he told himself love was a distraction he could no longer afford. She lived a different kind of quiet life. Her days were filled with people, yet she often felt invisible. She smiled easily, listened carefully, and helped whenever she could. Friends described her as kind, patient, and dependable. She was the person others leaned on when life became heavy. But when the world grew quiet at night, she felt the weight of her own loneliness. She had learned to hide it well. There were dreams she once carried, simple dreams of being understood, of being chosen without having to beg for attention. She had given her heart in the past too, believing love meant giving more and expecting less. That belief left her tired and cautious. She didn't stop believing in love altogether, but she no longer chased it. If it was meant to happen, she thought, it would find her. Their lives moved forward without any knowledge of each other. They lived in the same city, walked the same crowded streets, breathed the same dusty air. Yet fate had not yet decided to place them face to face. Both carried unspoken pain. Both had learned how to keep going without hope, and both believed their stories were already written. The day they met did not feel special at first. It was ordinary, almost forgettable. He was running late, his mind focused on the list of things he needed to do before sunset. His phone buzzed with unanswered messages from work. His shoulders felt heavy, like he was carrying more than one life on his back. He wasn't paying attention to the people around him, only to the ground beneath his feet. She was standing nearby, waiting patiently, holding something small she had bought moments earlier. Her thoughts were elsewhere on a conversation from earlier that had left her feeling unseen again. She stood still, breathing slowly, trying to steady herself before heading home. When they collided, it was clumsy and unexpected. He stepped forward without looking. She moved at the same moment. The impact wasn't strong, but enough to make her stumble. The small item slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. "I'm so sorry," he said immediately, his voice filled with concern. She looked up, surprised more by his tone than the accident itself. "It's okay," she replied quickly. Though her hands were already reaching down, he bent as well, picking up what she had dropped and handing it back to her carefully, as if it were something fragile. For a brief second their eyes met. It was nothing dramatic. No grand music, no sudden realization, just a pause. A quiet moment where the world seemed to slow down before moving on again. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she nodded. "Thank you for stopping. Most people wouldn't have." He offered a small smile, the kind he rarely used anymore. They could have walked away. Then, most people would have. But something made him hesitate. Something made her stay. They exchanged a few simple words. Polite, careful, safe. He explained he hadn't been paying attention. She waved it off, saying it happens. Nothing personal. Nothing deep. And yet, both felt something unfamiliar tug at them, a sense of calm. After a short pause, they went their separate ways. He continued down the street, but his steps slowed without him realizing it. Her face stayed in his thoughts longer than it should have. There was something about her presence that felt honest, unguarded. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, and yet she felt real in a way few things did. She walked home holding the item tightly in her hand. Her mind replayed the way he had spoken, soft, respectful, sincere. She told herself it meant nothing. It was just a moment. People met and forgot each other every day. Still, her heart felt strangely lighter. That night he lay awake longer than usual. His room was quiet, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about a stranger he would probably never see again. It bothered him more than he expected. Not because he wanted romance, but because the moment reminded him of something. Thought he had lost that connection. She sat near her window, watching lights flicker on and off in nearby buildings. The city felt close, but unreachable. She wondered why a simple interaction could leave such an impression. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was a reminder that not all connections came with pain. Days passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm. He threw himself into work again, convincing himself the moment meant nothing. She went back to her routine, helping others, offering smiles, pretending everything was fine. But fate, quiet and patient, was not done yet. Their paths crossed again, this time not by accident. He noticed her first. She was standing a short distance away, focused on something in front of her. Her expression was serious, thoughtful. He recognized her instantly, surprising himself with how clear her face was in his memory. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk away. Talking meant opening a door. Opening doors had cost him peace before, but another part of him, the part he had ignored for years, told him to stay. She sensed someone nearby and looked up. Their eyes met again. This time, recognition replaced surprise. She smiled first, small and unsure, as if asking permission. He returned the smile, slower but genuine. "I think we've met before," he said. "Yes," she replied softly. "You bumped into me." He laughed lightly, embarrassed. "I promise I'm more careful than that." "I believe you," she said. The conversation unfolded naturally, without effort. Simple questions, simple answers. They spoke about ordinary things, the weather, the crowd, how busy the city had become. Nothing that revealed too much, yet everything felt comfortable. Time passed without either noticing. For the first time in a long while, he felt present. Not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, just the moment. Just the sound of her voice. She felt heard, not talked over, not rushed. Just seen. When they eventually parted ways, there was no exchange of promises. No dramatic farewell. Just a quiet understanding that this wasn't the end. As they walked away, both carried the same unspoken question. What if this wasn't random? Neither of them said it out loud, but for the first time in a long time. Hope slipped back into their lives, not loudly, not boldly, but softly, like a careful knock on a door that had been closed for years, and neither knew that this simple beginning would soon change everything. After that second meeting, life did not suddenly change for either of them. There were no big confessions or dramatic moments. Both returned to their routines. But something quiet had shifted inside them. He found himself thinking about her at unexpected times. While working, while standing in long lines, even while walking home at night. It surprised him. He had trained his mind for years to avoid such thoughts. Yet now, they came without permission. He didn't fight them. He also didn't fully welcome them. He stayed cautious, reminding himself that moments could feel meaningful without leading anywhere. She noticed changes too. Her days felt a little lighter. She caught herself smiling for no clear reason. When her phone buzzed, she sometimes hoped it might be him, even though they had not exchanged contact details yet. She scolded herself for hoping. Hope had disappointed her before. Still, she couldn't ignore the warmth she felt remembering their conversations. He listened in a way people rarely did. He didn't rush her words. He didn't interrupt. That mattered more to her than anything romantic. Their next meeting came naturally. It wasn't planned. It happened in the same area where they usually pass through. This time, neither pretended it was accidental. They walked toward each other with small smiles, familiar now. The conversation picked up as if no time had passed. That ease surprised them both. They started talking more often after that. Sometimes it was just a few minutes, sometimes longer. They spoke about work, family, and the simple frustrations of daily life. Slowly, pieces of their inner world surfaced. Not deep confessions, but honest truths. He spoke about responsibilities that never seemed to end. She spoke about feeling overlooked. Even when surrounded by people, neither tried to impress the other. That was the difference. He liked that she didn't ask difficult questions or push him to explain things he wasn't ready to share. She liked that he never made her feel like she was talking too much or being dramatic. Silence between them never felt awkward. It felt safe. Over time, they exchanged contact details. It happened casually, without ceremony. A simple suggestion. A number shared. But once messages began flowing, something deeper started to grow. Their conversations stretched into late hours. They talked about memories that still hurt and dreams they weren't sure would come true. He avoided mentioning his past love in detail, but she sensed the scars. She didn't push. She waited. She shared pieces of herself slowly. How she always seemed to give more than she received. How she feared being taken for granted. He listened quietly, understanding more than he said, with each passing day. The distance between them closed, yet fear remained. He sometimes pulled back, replying later than usual. When that happened, she noticed a familiar doubt crept in. Had she imagined the connection? Was she once again investing in something that would fade without explanation? She didn't confront him. Instead, she grew quieter herself. That change didn't go unnoticed. One evening, he asked her if something was wrong. She hesitated before replying. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Honesty felt risky, but hiding how she felt worse. She told him she didn't like feeling unsure. She had spent too much of her life waiting and wondering. He read her message. More than once. Her words stirred something uncomfortable inside him. Not anger, but recognition. He realized his distance wasn't protecting him, it was confusing her. And she didn't deserve confusion that night. He told her something he hadn't planned to. He admitted that he was afraid. Afraid of opening his heart again and losing himself the way he once had. Afraid that caring too much would make him weak. She replied gently. She told him that fear was human, but disappearing without explanation hurt more than honesty ever could. For a long time, he sat with those words. They stayed in touch after that conversation, but things changed. Not in a bad way. In a clearer way, he tried to be more present. She tried not to rush her expectations. They met again, this time choosing to spend more time together. They walked side by side, talking about nothing and everything. He noticed small details about Hertha, way she listened with her whole face, the way she paused before answering serious questions, the way she laughed without trying to control it. She noticed his thoughtfulness, how he made sure she felt comfortable, how he remembered small things she mentioned before. These gestures, simple as they were, meant more than grand promises. Still, reality hovered nearby. His responsibilities did not disappear. Her insecurities did not magically fade. Both carried emotional baggage they couldn't leave behind. One evening, he grew quiet again. She sensed it instantly. This time, instead of retreating, she asked him directly what he was thinking. He told her he wasn't sure how to balance everything in his life. He worried that he wouldn't be able to give love the attention it deserved. He feared disappointing her. She listened carefully. Instead of taking his fear personally, she shared her own. She told him she was tired of being the strong one all the time, tired of understanding others while her own needs remained unmet. That honesty brought them closer. But it also raised an unspoken question. Were they strong enough to face this together, or were they slowly heading toward another goodbye? Neither had the answer yet. As days passed, their bond deepened quietly. Friends noticed changes in them. He smiled more without realizing it. She spoke with more confidence, stronger than before. Still, uncertainty lingered like a shadow. One moment brought them closer than ever, during a deep conversation. She shared something personal, a moment in her life when she felt completely alone, even among people who claimed to care. Her voice softened as she spoke. He listened, not interrupting, letting her finish at her own pace. When she stopped, there was silence. Then he spoke softly. He told her she deserved to be chosen fully. not halfway, not when convenient. Her eyes filled with emotion. No one had said that to her so simply before. In that moment, she felt safe. But safety frightened him after that night. He grew distant again, not dramatically, but enough for her to feel it. Messages shortened. Calls became rare. The warmth cooled. She tried to stay calm, reminding herself that real life was complicated. Still, questions grew heavier. Was he pulling away because he didn't care, or because he cared too much? She didn't ask. She waited, and while she waited, doubt returned. Part of her wanted to protect her heart. Another part wanted to fight for something that felt real. As for him, he wrestled with the same conflict. Letting her go felt safer, but losing her felt unbearable by the end of that phase in their lives. Something had changed again. They were no longer strangers. They were no longer just friends. They stood in a fragile space between fear and hope, knowing that whatever came next would redefine everything, and neither could turn back. Time did not break them apart all at once. It did it slowly, quietly, the way cracks form in a wall that looks fine from the outside. At first, nothing seemed wrong. They still exchanged messages. They still met when they could. But something in the air had shifted. The warmth that once flowed easily now felt careful, measured. Words were chosen more cautiously. Silences grew longer. She felt it. She had always been sensitive to changes in tone, in pauses, in the spaces between words. When his replies became shorter, when his laughter felt forced, she noticed. She told herself not to overthink it. Life was busy. People got tired. Not everything meant something, but some things did. He was fighting a battle she could not see. Every time he felt himself growing closer to her, fear tightened its grip. Caring for her made him question the balance he had built in his life. He worried about losing the control that kept him steady. He worried about opening a door he might not be able to close. He convinced himself that distance was kindness, that pulling back now would hurt less than breaking later. She didn't understand his silence, but she felt its weight. It reminded her of past moments when people slowly disappeared instead of being honest. Each unanswered message echoed old doubts. She waited. She gave him space. She told herself. Love should not feel like begging, but nights became harder. She lay awake replaying conversations. Wondering what she had said wrong? She wondered if she had shared too much of herself too soon. Or maybe she hadn't been enough. He noticed her withdrawal, but misread it. He thought her quiet meant she no longer cared. And so, both moved backward while believing the other was stepping away first. One day, everything came to a head. They had made plans to meet after a long week. She had looked forward to it more than she wanted to admit. Seeing him felt like stability, like something real in a life full of uncertainty. When the time came, he didn't show up. No call. No message. She waited longer than she should have. With each passing minute, disappointment settled deeper into her chest. By the time she finally left, it was dark outside. The streets felt colder. Later that night, a short message arrived. He apologized. He said something urgent had come up. He didn't explain further. She stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't the canceled meeting that hurt most. It was the lack of explanation. The assumption that she would understand without being considered. She replied politely, telling him it was fine. But it wasn't. The distance between them widened after that. She stopped reaching out first. He noticed, but pride and fear kept him silent. Both believed they were protecting themselves. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations became rare. When they did talk, it felt strained. Something precious was slipping through their fingers. Neither seemed brave enough to hold on tight, until one unexpected moment. He saw her by chance, standing across the street, talking to someone else. She looked different, stronger, more guarded. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, it's the way it once had. Seeing her like that stirred something painful inside. He realized how much he missed her presence, her understanding, her calm, the way she made him feel seen. The thought of losing her suddenly felt unbearable. He crossed the street. She noticed him approaching and stiffened slightly. They stood facing each other, unsure of where to begin. "How are you?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm okay." It was a simple answer built on restraint. They walked together for a while, talking about ordinary things. But tension filled every step. Finally, she stopped. She looked at him, not angry, just tired. "I need honesty," she said quietly, "even if it hurts." Her voice was steady, but her eyes told another story. He wanted to explain everything at once, but the words wouldn't come easily. Admitting fear felt like admitting weakness. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, "but you did," she replied softly. Those words hit harder than anger ever could. She told him how unseen she had felt lately, how waiting in silence had reopened wounds she thought had healed. She wasn't asking for perfection, just clarity. He listened, his chest tight. For the first time, he truly understood the cost of his silence. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Letting people in scares me." "No," she said. "But I can't stay where I feel unsure all the time." Her honesty frightened him. It meant a choice was coming. They stood there longer than they spoke. The city continued around them, unaware of the fragile moment unfolding. Finally, she took a small step back. "I care about you," she said, "but I need to protect myself too." She turned and walked away. He didn't stop her. That night, regret filled the quiet of his room. He replayed her words again and again. He realized that in trying to protect himself, he may have lost something rare. She cried for the first time in weeks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears that came from exhaustion. She had given him patience, understanding, space, and still she felt alone. Days passed with no contact. Silence settled between them like an ending. Yet, neither found peace in it. He felt her absence everywhere. In the moments he wanted to share something, in the quiet evenings, in the realization that safety without connection felt empty, she tried to move forward. She focused on herself, on healing old wounds. But something inside her resisted closure. She believed there was more truth left unsaid. Both stood at the edge of something unsure, whether to walk away completely or turn back and risk getting hurt. Again, what neither realized was that this separation was not the end. It was the moment that would force them to decide whether fear or love would shape. What came next? The silence between them lasted longer than either expected. It didn't scream or demand attention. It simply existed, heavy and cold, settling into their days like a shadow that refused to leave. He tried to distract himself with work. He stayed late, took on extra tasks, filled his schedule until there was barely room to breathe. People praised his dedication, but none of them knew he was running from regret, from guilt, from the fear that he had broken something he would never find again. At night, when everything slowed down, her absence became louder. He reached for his phone many times, typing messages he never sent. Every word felt too late or not enough. She tried to do the opposite. She slowed down, she focused on herself, something she had neglected for a long time. She spent time alone, took long walks, and allowed herself to feel what she had been avoiding. At first, the quiet felt peaceful, but slowly, it revealed wounds she hadn't fully healed. She thought about the way he used to listen, the way he made her feel understood without trying to fix her. Losing that connection hurt more than she wanted to admit. One evening, she received news that shook her. A close family member had fallen, seriously ill. The sudden fear brought everything into perspective. In moments like that, life felt fragile and uncertain. She wanted comfort. She wanted someone who made her feel less alone. She thought about him. For a long moment, she debated whether to reach out. Pride told her not to. Pain reminded her of how easily silence had replaced care. Still, she sent a short message. Just a simple hello. He saw it immediately. His heart raced. He hadn't realized how desperate he had been to hear from her again until that moment. He replied quickly, asking if she was okay. Her response was honest. She told him about the illness, about the fear that had wrapped itself around her chest. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't ask for sympathy. He felt his walls crack, without thinking too much. He went to see her. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, emotions flooded her face. Relief, surprise, caution. All at once, they sat together quietly at first. Words felt heavy. Finally, she spoke. "This scared me," she said. "It made me realize how alone I've been trying to be." He nodded, listening as he always had. "I should have been there before," he said. "Not just now." Her eyes filled with tears, not from anger, but from feeling seen again. That night, they talked for hours, not about small things, not about distractions. They spoke about fear, about loss, about how silence had hurt them both. He admitted how deeply his past heartbreak had shaped his actions. He admitted that pushing people away felt safer than risking pain. She told him how waiting and uncertainty slowly broke her trust, how loving without clarity made her feel invisible, neither accused, neither blamed. They simply told the truth. For the first time, he understood that strength wasn't about control. It was about showing up, even when afraid. For the first time, she understood that protecting herself didn't always mean leaving, but reality returned. Quickly, the next days were emotionally draining. Hospital visits, long waiting hours, uncertain news. She stayed strong for her family, but exhaustion filled her eyes. He stayed close, not always speaking. Just present, he brought food, waited quietly. Held conversations when distraction was needed, and silence when it wasn't. His actions spoke where words once failed. Yet fear still lingered. One night, after an especially long day, she asked him a question that had been growing inside her. "Are you here because of the situation?" she asked, "or because of me?" He didn't answer right away. The truth mattered too much to rush. "I'm here because I don't want to lose you," he said finally. "And because I'm tired of letting fear decide my life." She searched his face, looking for doubt. She found honesty instead. Still, she was careful. "I can't go back to Hafensers," she said. "I need to know you're willing to try, even when things get hard." He knew this was the moment. Not a promise of perfection, but a promise of effort. "I can't promise I won't be afraid," he said, "but I can promise I won't disappear." Those words mattered, more than love declarations ever could. The crisis slowly eased. The illness stabilized, though the future remained uncertain. Life didn't return to normal overnight. Neither did they. But something between them had changed. The silence that once separated them began to shrink. Trust rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. Yet not everyone supported their renewed closeness. Voices from outside questioned their choices. Some warned her not to get hurt again. Some told him he was making himself vulnerable. Doubt crept back in. One disagreement, small but sharp, reminded them how fragile things still were. Old fears surfaced. Old reactions threatened to return. This time, instead of withdrawing, they paused, they spoke. Not perfectly, but honestly. It wasn't easy. It wasn't smooth, but it was real. As days passed, she noticed something she hadn't expected: peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of understanding. He noticed something too. He wasn't losing himself. He was finding parts of himself he had hidden for too long. Even so, the biggest test still waited ahead, because choosing love once didn't mean choosing it every day would be easy, and both of them still carried scars that could reopen at any moment. As they stood at this fragile turning point, neither knew if what they were building would last, but for the first time, they were choosing to face the uncertainty together, and that choice would soon demand more courage than either expected. Life did not reward their choice with ease. If anything, choosing each other made everything feel more real, heavier, and more demanding. Love no longer lived only in quiet moments or long conversations. It now existed in decisions, sacrifices, and patience. After the crisis passed, reality settled back in. Daily routines returned. Responsibilities waited where they had been left. The world moved forward, indifferent to what they had endured at first. Everything felt fragile. They were careful with each other, almost too careful. Every disagreement felt risky. Every silence felt dangerous. Both were afraid that one wrong step could undo all the progress they had made. He tried harder than ever before. He showed up. Not just physically, but emotionally. When work drained him, he still made time. When fear whispered that distance was safer, he stayed instead. It wasn't always graceful. Sometimes he struggled to express himself. Sometimes words failed him, but he stayed. She noticed the effort in the small things. The way he checked in, the way he listened, even when tired. The way he didn't disappear when conversations became uncomfortable. For the first time, she felt chosen not just in words, but in action. Still, healing was not instant. Old wounds reopened unexpectedly. A delayed reply still made her chest tighten. A stressful day still made him retreat into silence for moments too long. When that happened, both felt fear rushing back. The difference was what they did next. They talked. Sometimes the conversations were messy. They didn't always use the right words. Sometimes emotion spoke louder than logic, but they kept choosing honesty over avoidance. One evening, after a small misunderstanding, she broke down. "I'm tired of being strong all the time," she said quietly. "I don't want to keep guessing where I stand." He listened. Then he did something he once believed he couldn't. He admitted he was still learning how to love without protecting himself too much. He told her he was afraid of failing her, afraid of losing balance again. "I don't want perfect," she replied. "I want effort. I want truth. I want presence." That night, something settled between them. Not certainty, but acceptance. Days turned into weeks. Their bond deepened. Not through big moments, but through shared ordinary days. Grocery runs. Quiet walks. Conversations about the future that felt uncertain but hopeful. They didn't pretend everything was fine. They acknowledged fear when it appeared, and slowly, trust stopped feeling like a risk and started feeling like a choice. He began to open parts of himself he had hidden for years. He spoke about dreams he had buried, about the pressure he carried, about the man he wanted to be but feared he never could. She listened without judgment. She felt honored to be trusted with those truths. She, in turn, allowed herself to ask for what she needed. Reassurance, clarity, time. She stopped shrinking. Her needs to keep the peace. To her surprise, he didn't pull away. He stepped closer. People around them noticed the change. Some admired it. Others doubted it. Not everyone believed a fragile beginning could lead to something lasting. At times, those doubts crept back into their minds. One particular moment tested them deeply. A difficult choice stood in front of him, one that involved his future, his responsibilities, and the possibility of change. It could bring growth, but it could also create distance between them. He struggled with the decision alone at first. Afraid of burdening her, she sensed it. Instead of waiting, she asked. They spent a long night talking through every fear and possibility. No raised voices. No accusations. Just truth laid bare in the end. The decision was not just his. It became theirs. That moment taught them something important. Love wasn't about losing yourself. It was about choosing together. Time continued. Its steady march forward. There were happy days. There were difficult ones. There were moments when old habits tried to return, but each time, they remembered how close they had come to losing each other. That memory changed. How they fought, how they forgave, how they stayed. One quiet evening, sitting side by side, he looked at her and realized something simple and powerful. This love didn't feel loud. It felt steady. It didn't need to prove itself to anyone. It lived in presence. In effort, in showing up again and again, she felt it too. Not as excitement, but as peace. She no longer wondered where she stood. She knew there was no dramatic ending to their story. No grand declaration, no perfect resolution. Life kept testing them, as it always does, but they faced it differently. Now, together, what made their story beautiful was not that they never hurt each other, it was that they chose to. Understand what made their love real was not perfection, it was commitment. In a world full of temporary connections, they built something quiet and lasting, something earned, and long after the pain that brought them together faded. What remained was a simple truth. The love that almost broke them became the love that saved them, because they chose courage over fear, honesty over silence, and each other over walking away, even after everything they had been through. Life was not finished testing them. Love had brought them closer, but it had also made them more vulnerable. When you truly care, every problem feels heavier because it matters. They settled into a rhythm that felt calm on the surface. Mornings became familiar. Messages turned into habits. Silence no longer felt threatening, just restful. Yet deep inside, both understood that real life never stays still for long. The first sign of change came quietly. He began to feel restless. It wasn't because of her. It was something internal, a pressure he had ignored for years. Responsibilities had shaped his life so completely that he had stopped asking himself what he wanted. Now that love had given him stability, those buried questions came back. She noticed his distraction. At first, she told herself it was temporary. Everyone had phases. But the distance in his eyes reminded her of the past. And fear slowly returned. One evening, she asked him gently what was bothering him. He hesitated. Then he admitted something difficult. He felt stuck, trapped between who he had become and who he once hoped to be. Loving her had shown him how much of himself he had put aside. And now, he didn't know how to balance personal growth with shared life. Her heart tightened. Not because he was honest, but because honesty sometimes changed everything. She worried that his need for change might someday push her aside. She had lived through being left behind before, and the thought terrified her. Instead of accusing him, she shared her fear openly. "I just don't want to be someone you outgrow," she said quietly. He took her words seriously. That night, they talked longer than they ever had. Not emotionally, but thoughtfully. About purpose, dreams, limits, and sacrifices. There were no raised voices, just questions searching for answers. They realized something important. Love alone was not enough. Understanding was required, support was required, and sometimes patience was required. Most of all, days later, circumstances forced that lesson into reality. A new opportunity appeared in his life, one that promised growth, but came with uncertainty and distance. It wasn't permanent, but it wasn't convenient either. He struggled with the decision. Part of him wanted to accept, afraid that refusing meant betraying himself. Another part feared that choosing it might damage what they had built. She sensed the weight he carried. This time, she didn't wait for doubt to grow. She told him she didn't want to be protected from the truth. "I want to be included," she said, "even if it's hard." Her words changed the conversation. They weighed every possibility together. They acknowledged risks without fear. It wasn't about convincing each other. It was about understanding what they were choosing. In the end, the decision was made with care, not impulse. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. The change that followed tested them. Deeply distance brought new challenges. Missed calls, different schedules, moments where reassurance was needed more than words could provide. Some days felt heavy. Some nights felt lonely. There were moments she questioned whether this was strength or sacrifice. Moments he wondered whether ambition was worth the ache he felt. But they kept communicating. Not always gracefully, but sincerely. When misunderstandings arose, they addressed them early instead of letting silence grow. When fear surfaced, they named it rather than hiding it. That effort mattered. Slowly, confidence replaced doubt. She discovered a new strength in herself, the ability to support without losing her identity. He learned that growth did not require isolation. When they reunited after a long stretch apart, the moment wasn't dramatic, no running. No tears, just relief. In that quiet reunion, they understood something powerful. They had changed individually, and together, life didn't suddenly become easier. Challenges remained. Responsibilities followed them, but love no longer felt fragile. It felt practiced, earned years from now. People would ask about their story. It would sound simple from the outside. No grand drama, no fairy tale perfection, but only they would know how many. Choices had shaped it, how many moments they could have walked away, how many times they chose not to. Their story wasn't about finding love, it was about learning. How to keep it in quiet courage, in honest effort, in choosing each other again and again. Even when life made it difficult, and that, more than anything, was what made their love real. Time moved forward, as it always did. Not quickly, not slowly. Just steadily after everything they had faced, life began to feel quieter. Not empty, but settled. The kind of quiet that comes after storms, when the air still carries memory, but no longer fear. They lived their days with more awareness now. Moments were no longer rushed. Conversations were no longer avoided. They had learned that unspoken words could grow heavier than spoken ones. Yet comfort can sometimes bring new challenges. With stability came reflection. She began to notice changes within herself. She was stronger, more confident, less afraid of being alone. And that strength, while healthy, stirred new questions deep inside her. For so long, she had defined herself by giving. Now she wondered who she was when she stopped doing that. He noticed her. Distance before she mentioned it. It wasn't emotional withdrawal. It was something calmer. A quiet self-focus that didn't include him in the same way. Instead of fear, he felt curiosity. One evening, while sharing a quiet moment, he asked her gently what had been on her mind lately. She didn't answer right away. Then she spoke honestly. She told him that loving him had taught her how to stand on her own. That for the first time in her life, she felt complete without depending on someone else for her worth. She paused. Worried her words might sound wrong, he listened carefully. Instead of feeling threatened, he felt something unexpected. Respect. I don't want to lose that version of you, he said, even if it means I have to adjust. Her eyes softened. That conversation shifted something between them. It reminded them that love wasn't meant to trap growth. It was meant to witness it. Still, growth brought tension. They began facing moments where their needs didn't line up perfectly. She needed space sometimes. He needed reassurance sometimes. Neither request was wrong. Meeting halfway required effort. There were misunderstandings. Small ones, but they addressed them early, before resentment could take shape. One night, after a long day, exhaustion led to sharp words neither intended. Silence followed. In the past, silence would have lasted. This time, it didn't. He returned and apologized first, not because he was entirely wrong, but because peace mattered more than pride. She met him with honesty. Instead of defense, they learned something important in that moment. Love didn't mean avoiding. It meant repairing it. As months passed, life presented them with a moment neither expected. A serious responsibility arrived, a decision would shape their future together. It wasn't romantic. It was practical. It required commitment, planning, sacrifice beyond emotion. They sat together late into the night, discussing every detail. Fear showed up, but so did clarity. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a shared direction. They didn't rush the decision when they finally chose. They didn't celebrate loudly. They simply held each other quietly. Understanding what this choice meant, days became fuller. Not busier, meaningful. They supported each other through small wins and difficult days. They learned how to show love in ways that matched each other's needs, she learned. That asking for reassurance didn't make her weak. He learned that. Offering it didn't make him vulnerable in a dangerous way. Friends noticed that difference. This relationship didn't seem dramatic or loud. It felt grounded, calm, real. Sometimes people mistook that calm for lack of passion. They knew better. Passion had matured into trust. One quiet afternoon, they talked about their pasts again. Not with pain this time, but with understanding. They could finally see how every disappointment had shaped them. For this connection, nothing felt wasted. Anymore, not the heartbreak, not the waiting, not the fear, all of it had led here. As time passed, small traditions formed, shared routines, inside jokes, comfort in everyday presence. They didn't depend on constant excitement. They cherished consistency. That consistency became their strength. One evening, as the sun faded, she realized something powerful. She wasn't scared of losing him anymore. Not because she loved him less, but because she finally trusted both him and herself. He felt it too. Love no longer felt like fragile glass. It felt like solid ground. Their story never became perfect. They still disagreed. They still learned. They still adjusted. But they faced it with maturity instead of fear. As the days continued, one truth became clear. What began as an emotional connection had turned into partnership. What once felt uncertain now felt chosen. And while the world around them continued to change, one thing remained steady. They didn't cling to love. They nurtured it, quietly, intentionally. And in doing so, they built something that didn't need to prove itself to anyone but them.